Hi, I'm Tina Hahn, and I was given the pleasure to introduce our next speaker. And I wanted to just tell you a little bit about why I enjoy talking about her. I'll go ahead and cut right to the chase because we know it's Annie Groth. I came to Pearls a couple of years ago and was really fascinated with just everyone, all the ladies, everybody getting together, all the wonderful information. And at that time, I was certainly not in the market to make any changes in my financial situation. I had an advisor that I worked with for years and years, and it seemed like my portfolio was adequate, and I was fine with it. So I decided, well, maybe I should just take a morning, carve a morning out of my time and go meet with Annie just to see what she has to say. Ladies, if you haven't been to Annie's office, take the time. That's all I can say. You will not regret it. She just enlightened me to so many things. She empowered me, really helped me understand my finances better. She told me I need to work longer than I want to, but that's all right. We have a plan, right, Annie? And it truly is just wonderful working with her. She's been not only a wonderful business partnership, but she's an awesome person and friend. And I just really enjoy coming to this and meeting you ladies and hearing Annie speak too. Thank you, Annie.
Thank you, Tina. And she has the best little dachshund in the world. Her name is Penny. Again, ladies, thanks so much for being here. I think that one of the most important things that I'd like to talk about tonight is your financial health. You know, we talk a lot about our physical health, our emotional health, and well-being, but when do we talk about our financial health? And that's what I'll share with you this evening. And before I get to that, how many of you know and have been here before, but know that I'm walking the El Camino in Spain? I'm just going to talk a little bit about that before I get started. I'll give you the update. I did my third leg of it this year. I just got back from walking 160 miles. And this year it was in the Burgos region, which is very famous for its wine. And it goes from the Burgos to the Plateau, which is miles and miles and more miles of harvested wheat and sunflowers. Spain is very famous for their sunflower oil, so there are just acres and acres and acres of harvested sunflowers. This particular year, it wasn't the most beautiful part of the Camino. I guess that's next year. The first 2 years that I walked the end, and then I walked the beginning, and now I'm filling in the middle. And the beginning and end were both just spectacular, so I'm really looking forward. Next year is the Leon region. One of the reasons why I walk the El Camino is to stay centered and to really think about my life and to envision what I want my life to look like, not only tomorrow, but for the rest of my life. And I don't know when we have the opportunity to do that on a normal basis because we're so busy. You know, we're busy with what we have to do tomorrow. We're busy with what we have to do tonight. Think about what it took to get here today. My day started at 4:30 a.m. I'm taking a red eye when I leave here tonight to go to, yes, it is an oh my goodness. But that's what we do to ourselves. You know, it's like, who's in charge of your schedule? Oh, that's right, it's me. So, but anyway, that's why I walk the Camino, to get centered, to really recognize what's important to me in my life. And I'll just share a couple of quick stories with you, and then I'll talk about financial health. The particular group that I book with, you get the opportunity to pay for your dinner and your breakfast ahead of time. Well, for those of you who have traveled to Europe, Europeans eat a lot later, both in the morning and at night, than we do. And I generally start walking about 6 a.m., 5:30 or 6 a.m. in the morning, because I want to beat the heat of the day. So I got to this one particular little inn. Oh, it was just spectacular. It had a quilted bedspread, and it was marvelous. And the hostess of the property, I told her I couldn't stay for breakfast, and she asked if I would like a picnic. And I said, sure. I said, I don't eat ham, so whatever you want to fix besides, because ham is big in Spain. Whatever you'd like to fix besides that would be great. So the next morning I got up and there was a plastic bag with my picnic. And of course it was a ham and cheese sandwich, an orange, and a bottle of water. So I put it in my backpack and off I went. Well, when you're walking the Camino, just like in life, you know, if we keep stuffing things in our backpack or in our heart, pretty soon we get weighted down, right? And so we all like to lighten the load a little bit. So I thought, I got to the second little village that morning and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to leave it. There will be somebody who will be hungry. So I left it on a fountain. And I went to the next village, and I went to the bathroom, and I came out, and there was a man standing there with the bag. He said, "Is this yours?" He told me it was yours. And I said, "Well, it was mine, but I left it for someone who's hungry." And he looked at me, and he said, "I'm hungry." And I said, "Well, it must have been meant for you." And so we both said Buen Camino, which means good Camino, and off I went. Well, in about an hour, he caught up with me. His name is Sergio, and he had Italian parents. He grew up in Switzerland, and we walked for about an hour and a half together. He was just a wonderful human being. And in that instant, you know why you're doing it. It's about there is no other. We're all in it together. And then one other quick story I'll share. It was the day before the last day, and I was in this very small village. The population was about 463. I'm still trying to discern where the other 400 people were. Pretty small. And so it was only a 10-mile walk that day. So I got in really early, and I'm like, gosh, what am I going to do for the rest of the day? And so I laid down on the bed for a little bit, took my shoes off, and thought, I know, in Spain, if you haven't been, I'm fascinated with the doors. So I thought I'll just walk around the little village and I'll go look at the doors. So I walk around, I look at the doors, and as I'm coming around the circle, there's an albergue here, and over to the side, there's a white van with all the Camino markings on it. So I go over there and I'm like, and I see in the window, in both Spanish and English, chiropractic, osteopath, and massage. Wow. So it's about a 20-foot RV, and so I poke my head in and I'm like, what's the deal? And he said, well, what's wrong with you? And I said, well, I don't think anything. I said, maybe a good massage, what's the deal? And he said, 30 minutes, 25 euros. I'm like, just a minute, I'm gonna go take a shower and I'll be back. So I came back, and he didn't leave the room. Most of the time massage therapists leave the room and you disrobe, and he didn't leave the room. So I left my shorts on, took my shirt off, and left my sports bra on. So I laid down, and he fiddled around with my sports bra just for a minute, and I said, just a minute, I'll take it off. And so I took the sports bra off, and the minute, this man's name is Paco, the minute that man touched me, I knew I was in the presence of a healer. I've never felt anything like that ever in my life. It was one of the most remarkable experiences I've ever had. He got about 50, and I started to cry. And he got about 15 minutes in, and I raised my head, and I'm like, could we do an hour? And he said, 30 minutes is enough. And Nancy, you'll appreciate this. I got off the table, and it was one of the most remarkable experiences I'd ever had. And I looked at him and I just said, Paco, that was amazing. And he didn't say this, but he might as well have. And he said, it was like, I know. And he hugged me, and I said, what's your deal? And he said, well, I studied in Germany, or Japan, and I've worked in Germany for years. And I said, well, what are you going to do now? And he said, I think I'll finish my life here. He was Spaniard, early 50s. And I thought, gosh, what a great business model. You got your RV, your office, your 9-month-old long-haired German Shepherd named Nova, and you have no overhead. And I'm like, gosh, what a great business plan. But anyway, that's why I walk the Camino. Those kinds of experiences, that you just can't get them if you don't go out and seek. And you don't have to go to Spain to get them, right? You can get them right here. So let's talk about financial health. When was the last time you had a financial checkup? You know, many of us go on about our business, whether it's in our financial health or our regular health, and we think we're fine. You know, it always amazes me when I have women come into my office, men too, but women, when women come into my office, who's your physician? I don't have one. What? I don't have one, I'm healthy. How do you know? How do you know you're healthy? Did you get a checkup? And people who come in with their financials and people who don't even open the envelopes, right? Because they're either afraid, or the biggest one I get all the time is, I don't know what it means anyway. You know, I've never understood it, so I just don't look at it and I just hope for the best. So the thing that I like to tell people is you need to know, and especially women. For many of you who know me and work with me, one of the reasons I'm so passionate about working with women is I always say we're the last to know and we should be the first to know. We should always know what's going on with our finances. One of the things that Diane didn't talk about when she talked about Medicare, Fidelity did a study not too long ago, and they counted from retirement age 65 to death, and they counted death at age 85. Many of us in the room will live much longer than that, especially the youngsters in the room will live much longer than that. But let's just say 65 to 85, your health care costs, not including Medicare and long-term care, the average is $240,000.
Oh.
Yes. So when you're thinking about retirement and what you're going to do, and especially with those programs being defunded and the programs going away, and our taxes keep, going up, and this is not about being political, it's about what are you going to do. And so when you look at your finances, are you looking in a holistic manner? Or do you just care about what's going on your stock account? Right? Or do you just care about what's happening with the equity of your home? All of those things and your insurances need to be combined in order to look holistically. Our next speaker is Dr. Susan Wilder. Do you imagine that when you go to see Susie and you go in there and say, you know what, Susie, my foot has been hurting. Could you prep her for open heart surgery, please? You'd look at her like she was out of her mind. But many times that's what happens in our financial lives. Financial advisors don't listen to you. They don't take into account what is really right for you. You know, it's kind of like you talk to them and it's like, want, Snoopy. Or when they talk to you, it's want, Snoopy. And then you hope for the best. So I'm going to challenge each of you when you go to see your financial advisor, and I'd be happy to give you a second opinion, you make sure that you understand what they're talking to you about. Because so many people don't understand the ins and outs of what's happening with their money, and especially to coordinate and integrate. You know, I could go see Susie, and Susie'd say to me, you know what, Annie, it wouldn't hurt if you'd lose, a pound or two. Great, Susie, I'm going to exercise, but you don't mind if I keep eating sugar, do you? Right? You can't do one without the other. You can, but gosh, what an uphill battle. So there are 3 distinct places that you can place your money: protection, savings, and growth. And it's important to make sure that those 3 components are coordinated and integrated rather than working independently of each other. Gosh, Susie, my foot hurts. Could you help me? Well, Annie, have you had an x-ray? That's what I help people with. I'll give you a financial x-ray and see what's happening with your money. Does that make sense? What would you say is the #1 concern that people have about their money? What would you say? Outlive my money. What else? Inflation. Right? What else?
How do I keep it?
How do I keep it? How do I keep what I've worked so hard for? So I talked about this in the last Pearls of Wisdom. One of the things that's really important is how much money should I save? And people get really confused about that. So some financial advisors will tell you 15%. Some will tell you more than that, but I'm going to give you the basics of how much money you should save. The base of it is 15% of your gross income, not your net, your gross. Why 15%? 3% for planned obsolescence. We know our tires are going to wear out, we know we're going to need a new roof, all those kinds of things. Technological change. It's like I said, my computer's about a year old, it's probably obsolete already, right? Pretty soon, technological change, mark my words, we will each have a 3D printer in our home. And whether we do it with our credit card, scan our phone, or a chip in our finger, we will walk over to the corner and print out our own shoes. We will print out whatever it is that we want. Technological change. 3% planned obsolescence, 3% for technological change, 3% for inflation. You know, there are a lot of women in this room that are my age-ish. And I remember when I was a little girl, I'd go down to the grocery store and the little corner store and buy my parents cigarettes. They were 10 cents a pack, right? I don't know what they are today. I think it's about $8 a pack of cigarettes, right? So inflation, you know, we have to watch that. Standard of living, 3% for standard of living. And then lastly, 3% for taxation. Now there's a lot of talk about we're going to get lower taxes in this country. It's going to be made up somewhere, but keep in mind when you have a 401k and IRA that you're deferring your taxes because you're going to pay them when you retire in your ordinary income tax rate. Well, people have been told their entire lives that they're going to be in a lower income tax bracket when they retire. My question is why would you want to be, right? You've worked hard your entire life and people say, well, I won't have to pay for my house, I won't need that. Great, you don't want to travel? Don't want to go see grandkids? Oh, and I just told you medical care costs, right? So how will you live on less money? But let's just say for a moment that you could. I want to remind you, in 1961, I was 6 at the time. In 1961, the marginal tax rate in this country, anybody, listen, if no one's heard me say this before, if you have, please be quiet. The marginal tax rate in this country, if anybody gets within 10 points, I'll take you to lunch. You don't get to play. You know better. The marginal tax rate in 1961 was 91%. We've already been there. So it's not news, and I'll take you to lunch anyway. It's not news. So when we think about what tax rate we're going to be in when we retire, there are strategies that you can do today to minimize those taxes. Last year, one of my brothers needed a kidney transplant. And so I took a bunch of money out of my retirement savings to help him. And man, was that a big tax bill. It wasn't, oh my gosh. So just make sure that you understand what's going to happen when you retire. And yes, there are strategies to help minimize that before you get there. And we'll have plenty of time for questions during the panel. And with that, I'll give you back to Lonnie and we'll bring up our next speaker. Thank you so much.